If psychology and pop culture had a baby, they'd call it Shrink Tank.
A new paper reveals more intelligent people are quicker to learn and unlearn.
90% chance that there's some weird animal out there. Yeah.
Stern's been doing this forever. And far more extreme. From Nashville and Charlotte, this is the Shrink Tank Podcast. Welcome, everybody. If you're joining us for the first time, a special welcome to you. If you're coming back for more, we thank you so much for joining us again. I'm Dave Verhagen in Nashville. We have a fantastic show for you, one of our favorite shows of the year. Our trending topic is the best of the year, the best of 2018. We'll get to that in our second segment. But first, we're going to meet our Charlotte panel. Dr. Emma Kate Wright is here. Hello, Emma Kate.
Hi, Dave.
And was the year overall for you in terms of pop culture, movies, TV, music, was it a good year, a disappointing year, solid, below average? How would you rate it?
I think it was a pretty good year. I really loved Black Panther. I loved that movie. I thought that was a great thing culturally to see that, that cast can hang and that people are worried about it, especially, what was it, Crazy Rich Asians, another great movie with diversity in it. I'd say overall this was a pretty decent year.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask Frank a different question. Dr. Frank Gaskell's here with us. And Frank, was there anything particularly disappointing for you in 2018?
It's going to sound trivial, but I was really, really, really into House of Cards, and Kevin Spacey being a banana head and having to be, dropped from that show. It was very disappointing. I was so looking forward to the next season, but yeah, that's ruined.
So the season didn't end up being good without him?
No, he was such a central figure, and I would always imitate him, and it was fun. And now that whole shtick is gone.
You would imitate Kevin Spacey?
His voice.
Because he's a pedophile, right?
Hedderly, shut up.
Well, you just heard him. Jonathan Hedderly's here. He's our certified Asian. He rounds out the panel. Jonathan, any disappointments of 2018?
Two immediately stand out, and we actually talked about them on the podcast. The first most recent one was I was really let down by Bohemian Rhapsody, the Freddie Mercury Queen film. And then a little while back, we talked about the Robin Williams documentary, and I just felt that was very lacking, and it really missed an opportunity to understand the inner workings of his mind and turmoil. And so I remember leaving, having watched it, very unsatisfied.
So I'm going to ask, I felt the same way about, I haven't seen Bohemian Rhapsody, but I agreed with the Robin Williams one. I will watch Bohemian Rhapsody and we'll circle back because we've gotten some feedback that it is better than you think. But here's my question about being disappointed in the year. Were any of you ultimately, at the end of the day, disappointed in Westworld Season 2? Because I can't get my head around whether I thought it was awesome or whether I was disappointed. That's one show that as I reflected back on it, I felt like I was lost the entire time, but then I thought it was really cool. I don't know. Emma Kate?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, kind of just being confused. I think the first season ended with just such a bang, and it was such a great season. And then the second one came along, and there's a lot of really cool plot twists and whatnot, but I still felt like they were throwing all of these new things kind of in at the very end, and so it felt kind of off, so I would agree with that.
I don't know. I definitely think back on season one and think, great season, one of the best final episodes of a season of any series. I mean, but season two, I felt like I was a dummy. I felt like I just didn't get it. And so, but yet I was along for the ride.
I felt the same way. I want to go back and rewatch it in more of a binge fashion to see if it doesn't make more sense. But I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah. Well,
I think it had a lot of unforgettable moments, but season 3 is going to probably help me in my appraisal overall of season 2.
Well, we'll get to, in our second segment, more of the things that we're really we're jazzed about that we think were awesome in 2018. But first, each week, Jonathan trolls around the internet. He finds a great story of psychology in the news It's our first segment that we call
Be Human.
The rate of ADHD diagnosis among children has nearly doubled in the past 2 decades. And a new study published in the New England Journal of Medicine raises questions about age, maturity, and overdiagnosis. Now, in states that require kids to be 5 years old by September 1st to begin kindergarten, children born in August in those states were 34% more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than those born nearly a year earlier in September, which is just after the cutoff date to begin in kindergarten. And in states with different cutoff dates, no such difference was found among the children. These effects were the largest among boys. Frank, what do you make of these findings?
Well, I was looking at a couple of these articles about this phenomenon, and Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Outliers, which I highly recommend, talked about hockey players having a disproportionate number of players with birth dates at the beginning of the calendar year. And the reasoning behind that is the cutoff date to be able to play hockey in Canada is January 1st of a certain age. And my takeaway from the study is more that if you've got a September 1st birthday and you're allowed to go to school, but if you're at the end of August and you can't go, then you've got another year to mature. And so there's this big discrepancy between younger and older kids who are beginning school. And it also feels as if some of these, I'd say, over or misdiagnoses are short office visits and being driven by teachers who are also probably overwhelmed. And it's hard to tailor a curriculum to kids that could potentially be 11 and a half months apart from one another. So I think there's a lot to this article. I think it's really interesting to look at the stats. But the biggest takeaway for the listeners or parents is have your child professionally evaluated. Don't just fill out a checklist and go to the pediatrician, because you have to figure out what's really going on with the kid's learning.
Yeah, and I think it is such a great thing, and I hope more professionals are aware of this, even just because when you think about the developmental difference between kids kind of in these younger years, 1 year or 11 and a half months or so makes a big, big difference in terms of level of maturity. And so then the expectations when they go into classroom, can they sit down for circle time? Can they deal with certain things? And teachers are really going to pinpoint and look at the kids that are disruptive to kind of the flow of the day. And so if that's a younger kid, that needs to be considered.
I think back to when my firstborn went to kindergarten, and she was in a class size of close to 30 kindergarten students. And then I think, and first of all, class started at 7:15 a.m. for a class of 30 kindergarten students. And then I think back to my experience. Kindergarten was a half day, and even in that half day, there was nap time, and then there was recess. And I don't remember the size of the class, but if I'm visually recalling the classroom picture, it was nowhere near the size of my daughter's class. So I think there's a lot of other variables rather than just misdiagnosis from doctors or pediatricians. But I also think there's this myth for parents, like Head Start, you got to get your kid in sooner rather than later.
And I'd also add that Dave Verhagen still has nap time. Am I right?
Oh yeah, every day at 2:45.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you're still doing that.
In fact,
I would also.
I pick my office decor based on that, where I have a couch that is the right size for a nap.
Nappable.
Nap suitable.
Yeah. And the thing, just adding to what Emma Kate said, the difference between a 17 and an 18-year-old is not much. Difference between a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, that's 30% of their life. So there's a dramatic difference between those two ages.
That your math doesn't add up there, but okay.
I know it doesn't. 25%. I don't know. 20%. Shut up, Heatherly.
Math, numbers. Well, if you have questions or comments about this, it's a fascinating study. We hope you write us at feedback@shrinktank.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let's move on to our trending topic. It's the best of 2018. We're going to make our recommendations about what things we saw or heard or experienced in 2018 that we thought were the best. And so I'm going to start, let's just throw it out there with movies to start with. Let's have it by some categories. We'll start with movies. And Emma Kate, you've already mentioned a couple of movies like Black Panther, Crazy Rich Asians. Do you have a top movie of the year?
Okay, so this isn't like the best movie in terms of critical acclaim, but I loved Avengers Infinity War just because it's, the culmination of all of these different films and franchises with each of the characters. And so I was hooked on that. But again, like I already mentioned, in terms of some of the diversity factor, I was really excited to see Black Panther and Crazy Rich Asians. So I think in terms of enjoyment, though, I would have gone with Infinity War because I'm a loser.
Frank, do you have a favorite movie or a couple of favorite movies of the last year that you think were the best of 2018?
Well, I will echo Avengers Infinity War. I've actually watched it probably 4 or 5 times. It's just amazing, and I feel like it just gets better the more I watch it. But I loved Incredibles 2. I loved it. It had the same feel of the original, except you got to know the baby better. I can't remember the baby's name.
Jack.
Yeah, Jack. He was incredible. Wait, it's called Incredibles. Hey, look what I did. I wanted to like The Quiet Place, but I didn't quite get there.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. That's a great one.
Jonathan, best of 18.
Well, there's so many films I'm still wanting to catch before the end of the year or early January when they finally make their way around to Charlotte. There really is 2 movies that I've seen that I think back to, and I really am amazed by how great they were. The first would be 8th Grade, Bo Burnham's very honest and realistic to an uncomfortable level following Kayla in 8th grade. And then, or her last week of 8th grade. And then the documentary on Mr. Rogers, Won't You Be My Neighbor? I think those 2 movies, when I saw them, the more I think about them, I just think they're great movies that are going to stand the test of time.
I would actually add one more film. It was the Jurassic Park movie because I love all Jurassic Park movies. But it's the only movie this year that my throat got kind of tight. I started to choke up when the Brontosaurus is trying to escape the fire and doesn't make it. I kind of almost lost it.
I'm pretty sure you kind of almost lost it during Bo Burnham's 8th grade too, right?
Okay.
Because you were
Yes.
reliving your childhood trauma with your
Yes,
friends.
that is true. Thank
Okay.
you.
Frank,
Thank
let me
you.
ask you one quick question. What did you enjoy more, the Jurassic Park movie or Hamilton, the musical?
I will be honest. I'm not a big fan of musicals or plays.
Uh-huh.
Hamilton was fine. It was fine.
Fine.
It was a lot of singing, and I couldn't understand half of it. So I'd have to go with Jurassic Park and Solo were better than Hamilton.
Okay, you heard it
I was
here
going to say,
first.
just to kind of recap, Hamilton, so-so, Jurassic Park, awesome.
So basically,
I would see Jurassic Park many times.
what many people consider to be one of the worst Jurassic Park films, and
Correct.
that's a lot of arm wrestling.
That
There's a lot of
is.
nominees, and then what people generally consider to be one of the worst Star Wars movies.
Mm-hmm.
They both are better than Hamilton.
Hedderly, no. Nobody thinks that Solo. If you're a true Star Wars fan and you care about that franchise, Solo is awesome.
Listen to the
Solo
voice
is
writers,
awesome.
folks.
You got to meet Chewbacca. You got to see the escape
Listen.
pod of the
If you're
Millennium
a
Falcon.
true Star
that
Wars
freaking
fan
movie. That
and
movie's amazing.
You don't play sports
Stop.
and you have no friends.
Stop
and
it.
It's just like in Hamilton.
Dude, Solo was amazing. And anybody who says
Bad.
it's not, that thing made a ton of money. From somebody to say that's a bad movie, they need to be
Well, we don't all
beaten
care
up.
about money the way you do, Frank.
Oh, God. I swear.
Yeah, so you heard it here first. I'm going to agree. On my short list of 3 movies, Jonathan said my number 2 and number 3. So number 2 for me was 8th grade. Number 3 was Won't You Be My Neighbor, the Fred Rogers movie. My number 1 is a movie that's not showing up on anybody's top 10 list. It just totally flew under the radar, totally was missed, but I've said it here before. It's American Animals. I've seen it twice. It holds up equally good the second viewing. It is a movie that's hard to characterize because it's got comic elements, it's got dramatic elements. It's a movie that you think is kind of a goofy, light lark of a film where these three, I guess it's 3 or 4 guys break into a library at school to steal these rare books. You think it's very lightweight, and then it has an emotional punch at the end. To me, it's still the best movie I've seen this year. Eighth Grade's a close second, but American Animals is definitely, for me, the movie that I'll remember out of this year. All right, let's switch to TV. I want to ask you, you can answer either or. Best drama, best comedy, either one or both. Emma Kate, do you have one?
There are funny moments in this show, but not quite. I really enjoyed Ozark on Netflix. I have still not told my brother that I have watched this series because he's been telling me to watch it forever. But I just finished season 2, and I think it's addictive and insane, the things that this family's going through. Essentially, it was a guy who was an accountant in Chicago, gets wrapped up in money laundering for the cartel, and it's wild. And I loved it.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild show. And would you say that's the best show of the year or the best show that you've seen?
The best show that I've seen. I really don't watch a ton of television, so yeah.
All right. Frank, any recommendations as the best of the year?
Well, again, I don't watch a whole lot of TV either, but I absolutely loved Castle Rock, the Stephen King show on Hulu. It was amazing, and it's familiar settings. It makes you really think, who is the bad guy? Is he bad? Is he not? It was absolutely riveting.
Good stuff. Jonathan, best on television, drama, or comedy, or both?
I'll be honest, I didn't watch a lot of current television this year. We already talked a little bit about Westworld, which I greatly enjoyed, don't pretend to understand, and am kind of worried about, can they stick the landing in season 3, or have they cornered themselves with so many like provocative questions and world building and rules? But one show I did watch and I just loved, and it's showing up on a lot of best of lists, so I feel like even if I had more time to watch television, that this would still stay near the top, was HBO's Barry, Bill Hader and Henry Winkler. That show is just, that's the type of entertainment that I like. There's real depth of characterization. It's both creative, it's funny, it's sad and tragic. Like, I just loved that show, and I was kind of worried around episode 4, midway through, how are they going to turn this into a satisfying resolution for the season? And I think they did it. Like, I did not feel cheated at the end of that season. So Barry stands head and shoulders above the rest for me.
That was my pick for best comedy, and it's interesting because it is a comedy, but it's just it doesn't fall neatly into the comedy category.
Yeah, other than Henry Winkler's character, there's not a lot of like punchlines or setups. It's just sort of like awkward people, characters that amuse you in some ways, but they're not intending to be funny. They just are.
Right. And it's also like scary in some ways in terms of what's happening to the people. It's got some emotional depth to it. It's really a pretty complex show. I'd say for me, if I had to pick a comedy, that's the one. Best drama for me was the end of The Americans, the final season of The Americans. And I think they totally stuck the landing. There are a couple of series where, you know, the legacy of the series in many ways hangs on how well they end it. So Breaking Bad's a show like that, and they nailed it for Breaking Bad. The Americans is right up there. It's a show where they nailed the ending. The whole series becomes a satisfying experience because of that. I think it's going to go down as one of the great series of this era.
I completely agree. I forgot about that. That was my favorite drama. And I will tell you, in that last season, there's one episode where they have to do something very gruesome in a car parking lot.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the most horrifying things. And I had to look away. Like I could not, I almost couldn't take it.
Oh, I know. It was unbelievable.
It was so disturbing on a relational level, on the physicality of it. Oh God.
So, how'd you feel about the final episode? Do you feel like it ended the way it needed to or should have?
Yeah, I think they nailed it. It was sad. It was sweet. It just so many emotions in those final moments, and I actually did not think it was going to go that way. I thought that something else may have happened to them.
Yeah, that's how I did too. It didn't go the way I thought it would at all. Okay, so let's do one more, and then we'll open it up to a kind of bigger idea. But let's have one more category of music. Any music this year, and you don't have to go around the horn. If anybody has any music in particular that's really stood out for them, either a song, an album, a concert experience, anything that really stands out.
I will start, but I have to admit, I typically hate country music, and I know Casey Musgrave is historically she is more country, but she kind of had this nice blend with pop on her most recent album, Golden Hour, and I haven't enjoyed a full album like that in quite some time. And it's not, the lyrics aren't intense or anything like that, but it was really, there were some upbeat, relaxing songs, and I'm getting a lot of weird stares from my cast here.
You said the name of it is Golden Hour?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okie dokie. Anyway, so Golden Hour, not shower.
I wasn't thinking that. I was Emma Kate. I was just clarifying the word. How dare you bring something? This is a children's show. Jeez, Emma Kate.
Okay, I'm just done. All right, here. Go on.
Golden Hour. Got it.
I really like Cardi B, Childish Gambino,
Ew.
and Howard Stern. That's my favorite music.
That is the third Howard Stern for the day, folks.
I know.
And our
I know, I'm
listeners
done.
aren't aware of this, but when Frank says Howard Stern 3 times in a day, he has to be punished
No.
if we hear it a fourth time.
Yes, I get waxed.
And an angel gets their wings.
Yes.
Jonathan, I know you have some thoughts about this.
Well, this was the year of concerts for me. I went to a lot of concerts, a lot of memorable ones. I saw Beck, I saw Spoon, you and we saw Arcade Fire. And I really, I do think that overall my taste in music and what I got exposed to for new music maybe wasn't as robust as I would have hoped, but I compensated by going to a lot of live music. But I'll tell you, the years from now, I'm going to remember 2018 for Childish Gambino's music video of This Is America. I can't even recall how many times I have watched that, and it just, just the tension, just the artfulness of it. Like it is a perfect music video. It's the perfect time that it dropped with what's going on in America.
Yeah, it's the best music video I think I've seen in years, maybe a
I would
decade.
agree.
I mean, that's how good a video it is, because everything about it's perfect. Every single aspect of it is exactly right.
I don't think there's another. I think it is the greatest music video of all time. I really do.
I mean, it has to rank up there with Michael Jackson's Thriller when you think of like the
Yeah.
cultural impact that it had.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're at it, since we're talking about him, what a year for Donald Glover, man. I mean, what a year.
He was in the best Star Wars movie recently,
all time,
right?
yes.
Best Star
Better
Wars
than
movie
Hamilton.
oh my, dude. Okay,
It's getting personal, guys.
all right.
It's getting personal.
So-
I'm not going to react.
No, but I mean, and I don't know, did any of you watch Atlanta this season?
No.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
Well, it's his series. Again, it's kind of like Barry in that it technically is a comedy, but it is not anywhere close to a traditional comedy, and it's amazing. It is you feel like you're in some kind of weird trance state almost when you're watching it in some of the episodes. It's just, and it's not meant to, I mean, it's not like this ethereal kind of thing. It's just the way that these little stories are told and what happens. There are a couple of episodes, at least 2 of that series, that are among my favorite episodes of any show of this past season. So definitely there. But back to music. I'm going to tell you, I don't think this is going to show up on anybody's top 10 list for the year. But my favorite album, and I'll say for me the best album of the year, was The Struts. They have a new album called Young and Dangerous. And I think they're kind of they're the heir apparent of Queen. You know, they've got a lead singer that can go anywhere vocally, and he's flamboyant and a showman, and they're just old school rock and roll, awesome. By the time this podcast airs, I will have seen them in concert here in Nashville. So that to me that's an album that I've played over and over and over again. I just enjoy driving around with that one. The best song that I've heard is Hozier's song, Nina Cried Power. I think that's one of the best songs I've heard in a few years. That if you haven't heard that song, definitely take a listen to it. It's a kind of a tribute to what's come before him musically and the people that used music as a platform for social change and making a difference. And it's a very, very powerful song. Okay, so last question, just throwing this out. In any category, including things we haven't talked about, could be books, it could be video games, it could be live experiences, anything else that for you in pop culture was the best of the year? Frank.
Okay. Two things. One is just how Fortnite has swept our culture, and I think it's a phenomenal experience. However, I was able to participate in a viral Twitter experience for the first time while it was happening, and it was the raccoon that climbed the building, that climbed the skyscraper. And I got some Twitter notification or Reddit notification, and it was like late at night, and I'm talking about this raccoon, and everybody's watching it, and it was this phenomenon, and I was there, like tweeting to the raccoon and the people, and it wasn't like, oh, hey, I just saw this on Reddit, it already happened. I was there, and I got to share it. And it was it was exhilarating.
I feel like maybe 10,000 people know what you're talking about.
Okay, so there was a raccoon that was spotted climbing
You made him
a
talk
skyscraper.
more, Emma Kate. I blame you. I blame you.
And people were filming the raccoon on the windowsills, and it I don't know how.
Oh, we
but
get it.
It climbed
we were
all
listening.
the way to the top.
Oh,
And it was
Yeah,
amazing.
we get it. Right.
cool.
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 Maybe we'll link the video to this post for the podcast.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That is a great idea.
So there's that, and then there's the royal wedding,
Oh, geez.
which probably was viewed by 30 million people.
Was there a raccoon there?
No biggie.
30 million
No.
lonely people.
No, it was that. If we were to talk about another thing, that was something I was so excited about, to have another royal marriage.
This to me was the coming out year for John Mulaney, where he was somebody that I loved, but not a lot of people were familiar with him early in the year, January. I got to see him live as part of his Kid Gorgeous tour, and then the Netflix special dropped. And now everybody knows and rightfully loves John Mulaney because I think he's one of the best comedians around right now.
You were definitely an early adopter for John Mulaney, and you were talking about him before he blew up. So want to give you props for that, but absolutely one of the best stand-ups in a long, long time. So definitely worth watching. All right. Well, there's a lot more to talk about, but it has been a pretty good year. There have been some highlights in music, movies, TV, live experiences, and all the rest. We're wishing all of you a very happy new year. We'll be back in the new year. That's going to do it for this edition of the Shrink Tank Podcast, and also for 2018 with the Shrink Tank Podcast. We hope you'll check out shrinktank.com. We'll have great articles and videos up there all the time for you, including a link to the raccoon video that Frank just talked about, and links to our Doctor's Orders products. You can follow us on Twitter, we hope you will, at @shrink_tank, and like us on Facebook. If you have questions or comments, drop us a note. Our email is feedback@shrinktank.com. And if you like the show, please go to iTunes, give us a review. It really helps us build our audience, and we'd greatly appreciate it. Well, our producer and theme music composer is the awesome Sean Beck. And our associate producer and social media guru is the fantastic Mariel Butler. For Emma Kate Wright, Jonathan Heatherly, and Frank Gaskell in Charlotte, I'm Dave Verhagen here in Nashville. Tell all your friends about us and make it a great new year.